The morning after the investigation, Ethan woke with a cold sweat clinging to his skin. The phantom glow of the system warning still burned behind his eyelids. Unauthorized access detected. Trace initiated. He'd managed to shut down the console before the trace completed, but the damage was done. The system knew something was wrong with him. And that enforcer. The memory of that cold smile from the shadows made his stomach twist. He forced himself out of bed, the dorm room feeling smaller, more suffocating than ever. Through the window, the Orion Academy's training grounds were already bustling with students. Elites practicing flashy SS rank skills that painted the air with elemental colors. Low-rankers like him grinding basic exercises. The divide was stark, a living map of the new world's hierarchy. Ethan's reflection in the glass showed a young man with tired eyes and an ordinary D-rank combatant class displayed above his head in faint blue text. The perfect disguise. Time to make it more convincing, he muttered, pulling on his training gear. Over the next week, Ethan threw himself into training with a ferocity that surprised even him. Every dawn found him in the academy's eastern courtyard, a stone-paved area dotted with practice dummies and obstacle courses. He ran laps until his lungs burned, lifted weights until his muscles screamed, sparred with holographic opponents until his knuckles were raw. But beneath the sweat and strain, his mind was always working, fingers twitching with the ghost memory of pressing the grave accent key. He used the admin console sparingly, carefully, tiny edits that wouldn't trigger another warning. Before a sprint, he'd open the debug menu with a thought, the interface appearing only to him, translucent lines of code overlaying reality, and tweak his local stamina regeneration variable from 1.0 to 1.05. Not enough to be noticeable, just enough to shave half a second off his time. During strength training, he'd adjust his strength multiplier from base to 1.03, letting him lift slightly more than his stats should allow. He kept each buff under 5%, lasting no more than an hour, and always erased the variable changes afterward, leaving no logs. It was like walking a tightrope over a chasm. One misstep, and he'd fall into the system's scrutiny. Maya found him one afternoon after a particularly grueling session. The sharp-eyed scout leaned against a stone pillar, her own C-rank scout class shimmering above her. "You're pushing hard," she said, her voice neutral but her eyes calculating. "The tournament's got everyone on edge, but you're different." Ethan wiped sweat from his brow, forcing a casual shrug. "Just trying to keep up." After the dungeon raid, he trailed off, the unspoken accusation hanging between them. After the dungeon raid, Kale's been telling everyone you cheated. Maya finished, pushing off the pillar. "He's demanding a rematch in the tournament. Signed up for the same bracket as you." Of course he had. Kale, the bully from registration, the one Ethan had humiliated by setting his agility to 0.1 for 3 glorious seconds. The memory almost brought a smile to Ethan's lips, but the reality chilled him. Kale was the son of a clan heir, with a solid B-rank warrior class and a grudge that had only festered. In the tournament, everything would be public, recorded, scrutinized. No room for obvious tricks. "Let him talk," Ethan said, turning back to the practice dummy. "I'll beat him fair and square." The words tasted like ash in his mouth. The Orion Academy tournament was held in the Grand Coliseum, a massive structure of enchanted stone that had been erected in weeks after the system's arrival. Tiered seating rose around a central arena the size of a football field, currently divided into 4 magical dueling platforms. Banners of the major clans, Orion, Solaris, Void, fluttered in the artificial breeze generated by climate control spells. The air hummed with energy, both from the crowd's excitement and the latent system interfaces flickering above thousands of heads. Ethan stood in the contestants' preparation area, a stone-walled chamber beneath the Coliseum. Around him, students stretched, meditated, or boasted loudly about their abilities. Kale was holding court nearby, his muscular frame adorned with gleaming armor that probably cost more than Ethan's old college tuition. "And then I'll break that cheat's legs," Kale was saying to a group of sycophants. "Teach him what happens when you mess with a real warrior." Ethan ignored him, focusing on his breathing. His first match had been easy, a nervous D-rank healer who surrendered after a few feints. Ethan had won without using the console, relying on basic combat training. But now, the bracket display shimmered in the air. Round 3. Ethan, D-rank combatant, versus Kale, B-rank warrior. Platform 2. A hand touched his shoulder. Maya stood beside him, her expression unreadable. "Be careful," she said quietly. "Kale's not just strong. He's got a skill, Warrior's Rage. Boosts his damage by 50% for 30 seconds. He'll try to end it fast." Ethan nodded, gratitude warring with guilt. Maya had been watching his back since the dungeon, her suspicion tempered by something like camaraderie. He wondered what she'd think if she knew the truth. "Thanks," he said. "I've got a plan." He didn't, not really. But the console glowed in his mind, a silent promise. The announcer's voice echoed through the Coliseum, magically amplified. "Contestants to Platform 2. Ethan stepped into the light. The arena was blindingly bright. The dueling platform, a circle of polished white stone etched with runes that glowed softly to contain stray spells. The crowd's roar was a physical force, thousands of voices merging into a wave of sound. Across the platform, Kale cracked his neck, a cruel grin spreading across his face. His interface displayed his stats publicly, a show of arrogance. Strength, 85. Agility, 60. Stamina, 110. Ethan's own stats were hidden, set to private, but he knew they paled in comparison. Strength 45, agility 50, stamina 70. On paper, this was a massacre. The referee, a stern-faced teacher with an A-rank arbiter class, raised a hand. "Combatants, ready. No lethal force. Yield or incapacitation ends the match. Begin." Kale didn't wait. He charged, his feet pounding against the stone, his greatsword materializing in his hands in a flash of light. It was a system-summoned weapon, gleaming with sharpness enchantments. Ethan barely dodged the first swing, the blade whistling past his ear. He backpedaled, heart hammering. This was it, the moment to cheat or lose. As Kale lunged again, Ethan's mind split. One part focused on survival, ducking and weaving with desperate agility. The other part accessed the admin console. The debug menu unfolded in his vision, translucent lines of code overlaying Kale's furious face. Ethan's fingers twitched at his sides, inputting commands only he could see. He didn't dare touch strength or agility, too obvious, too easily detected. Instead, he targeted stamina, the foundation of endurance. With a thought, he edited the local variable, target_entity, Kale, attribute, stamina_8, value, 2.5, duration, 180 seconds. It was a subtle change. Kale wouldn't suddenly collapse. His stamina would just drain twice as fast as normal. In a short match, it might not matter. But if Ethan could drag this out. Kale's next attack was slower, his breathing already coming harder. "Stand still, you worm," he snarled, activating his skill. Warrior's Rage. A red aura erupted around him, his muscles bulging. The crowd gasped. Kale's greatsword became a blur, strikes coming so fast Ethan could only block with his own simple sword, each impact jarring his arms to the bone. He took a hit to the shoulder, pain blossoming hot and sharp. His health bar, visible only to him, dipped by 20%. Ethan gritted his teeth, dancing back. He needed more. Another command, target_entity, self, attribute, pain_threshold, value, 1.2, duration, 60 seconds. The agony in his shoulder dulled, manageable. He could think again. The match became a dance of attrition. Kale raged, his attacks powerful but growing sloppier as his stamina plummeted. Ethan stayed on the defensive, parrying, dodging, letting Kale exhaust himself. Minutes ticked by. The crowd's cheers turned to murmurs of confusion. How was a D rank holding out against a B rank's enhanced assault? Kale's rage aura flickered, the 30 seconds ending. He was panting now, sweat pouring down his face. His stamina bar, invisible to all but Ethan and himself, was in the red. You're just lucky," he gasped, lowering his sword slightly. Ethan saw his opening. He didn't need the console for this. With a burst of speed, he feinted left, then drove his shoulder into Kale's chest. The bigger man stumbled, off balance. Ethan swept his legs, and Kale crashed to the stone with a grunt of pain. Before Kale could rise, Ethan placed his sword at his throat. "Yield," he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline singing in his veins. Kale's eyes burned with hatred, but he spat. "Yield." The referee's hand shot up. "Winner, Ethan. The Colosseum erupted. Cheers, mostly from the low-rankers who saw one of their own triumph. Ethan allowed himself a small, genuine smile as he helped Kale up, a gesture of sportsmanship that made the bully scowl harder. As he turned to leave the platform, his eyes scanned the crowd and froze. There, in the VIP section reserved for Academy officials and clan leaders, stood a man Ethan had never seen before. Tall, impeccably dressed in a dark suit that seemed out of place amid the armor and robes, with hair the color of brushed steel and eyes that held no warmth. Above his head, instead of a class designation, floated a simple, chilling tag, System Liaison, Enforcer Grade. The Enforcer from the shadows. He was watching Ethan, his expression unreadable. Ethan's victory high evaporated, replaced by a cold dread. He hurried off the platform, pushing through the congratulatory slaps on the back, his mind racing. He needed to get away, to think. But the Enforcer was already moving, descending the steps with unnatural grace. He intercepted Ethan near the contestants' exit, his presence seeming to quiet the noise around them. "Ethan," the Enforcer said, his voice smooth, devoid of accent or emotion. "A remarkable performance. For a D rank." "Thank you," Ethan managed, forcing politeness. "I trained hard." "Indeed." The Enforcer's eyes flickered, and for a second, Ethan thought he saw lines of code reflected in them. Your luck in the dungeon raid was notable. And now this victory against a statistically superior opponent. The probability is anomalous. Ethan's throat went dry. "I got lucky." Kale overtaxed himself. "Perhaps." The Enforcer took a step closer, and Ethan caught the faint scent of ozone, like electricity after a storm. The system monitors all variables. Stamina drain rates, pain thresholds, even minor fluctuations are logged. Yours show inconsistencies. Panic clawed at Ethan's chest. He'd erased the changes. Had he missed something? A residual variable? The console's corruption routines weren't perfect. He knew that. "I don't know what you mean," he said, his voice tighter than he intended. The Enforcer smiled, a thin, cold curve of lips. "We'll be watching, Ethan. The system dislikes anomalies. They tend to corrupt the data." He leaned in, his whisper carrying an edge of threat. "Enjoy your victory, while it lasts." Then he turned and walked away, melting into the crowd as if he'd never been there. Ethan stood rooted to the spot, the cheers of the Colosseum fading into a distant buzz. The console's interface flickered in his mind, a silent, deadly companion. He'd won the match, humiliated Kale, risen in the tournament rankings. But as he looked at the spot where the Enforcer had vanished, one truth crystallized with icy clarity. He wasn't just a student with a secret anymore. He was being hunted. The first warning came not as a sound, but as a vibration, a low, bone-deep hum that rattled the windows of Orion Academy's dormitory wing. Ethan jolted awake in his narrow bed, the afterimages of his console interface still dancing behind his eyelids. He'd been practicing again, running subtle edits on his own stamina regeneration while pretending to sleep, pushing the limits of what he could tweak without triggering another system ping. Then the alarms blared. Screams echoed from the courtyard below, followed by the unmistakable roar of something that had never existed before the apocalypse. Ethan scrambled to the window, his heart hammering against his ribs. The Academy's high walls, usually glowing with defensive runes, were flickering erratically. Beyond them, in the moonlit wasteland that had once been suburban sprawl, shadows moved. Too many, too fast. "Monster siege," someone shouted in the hallway, their voice cracking with panic. "They're breaching the eastern gate." Ethan didn't hesitate. He yanked on his combat gear, reinforced leathers issued to all Academy students. Those were subtly enhanced through console-edited durability values, and grabbed his standard-issue short sword. As he burst into the corridor, students poured from their rooms, a chaotic mix of fear and adrenaline. He spotted Maya near the stairwell, her scout's leathers already strapped tight, a pair of daggers gleaming at her hips. Her sharp eyes met his, and she gave a curt nod. "They're coordinated," she said, falling into step beside him as they pushed through the crowd toward the main courtyard. "Not like the random attacks. This feels targeted." Ethan's mind raced. A siege. The Academy had drills for this, but those were simulations against scripted mobs. This was real, and the console hummed in the back of his consciousness, a silent promise of power. He could already see the variables dancing at the edge of perception, health bars floating above distant shapes, defense ratings flickering like bad code. They emerged into the courtyard, and the scene stole Ethan's breath. The academy's walls, 50 feet high and woven with system-enhanced barriers, were under assault from a nightmare menagerie. Hulking brute-class mutants slammed against the stone, their fists cracking the surface. Swarms of winged screechers dove from the sky, raking claws across the defensive shields. And at the center of it all, a towering behemoth, a creature of chitin and muscle, its health bar glowing a dangerous crimson, battered the eastern gate with methodical, earth-shaking blows. "All students to defensive positions," bellowed Instructor Vance, his voice amplified by a command skill. The burly combat teacher stood on a raised platform, directing squads with frantic gestures. "Mages to the ramparts. Tanks hold the gate. Scouts, identify priority targets." Ethan and Maya were swept into a group of lower-ranked students, mostly D and C classes, their faces pale under the flickering light of spellfire. Kale, the bully Ethan had humiliated in the tournament, glared at him from across the formation, but there was no time for petty rivalry. A section of the wall to their left exploded inward, showering them with debris as a pack of wolf-like ravagers poured through the gap. Chaos erupted. Students screamed and scattered, but Ethan's training, and his secret buffs, kicked in. He ducked under a ravager's lunge, his console whispering possibilities. With a thought, he accessed the debug menu, the familiar transparent overlay appearing only to him. His fingers twitched, inputting commands he'd practiced in secret. Target, Ravager_Alpha_003. Edit, Defense rating -30%. Duration, 10 seconds. Execute. The lead Ravager, a hulking beast with frothing jaws, stumbled mid-leap. Its hide, previously tough as steel, seemed to soften visibly. Maya didn't miss the opening. She darted in, daggers flashing, and sank both blades into its exposed flank. The creature howled, its health bar plummeting, and collapsed. Ethan allowed himself a grim smile. Subtle, undetectable, just another lucky strike in the chaos. "Nice assist," Maya panted, yanking her daggers free. But her eyes lingered on him a moment too long, that same suspicion from weeks ago flickering in her gaze. They fought their way toward the main gate, where the behemoth was now tearing through reinforced steel. Ethan's console showed the monster's stats in glowing text. Level 45, Health 15, 000/15, 000, Defense A rank. Abilities, Crush, Quake, Enrage. Students and teachers alike were falling, their health bars blinking red before fading to gray. The air reeked of ozone and blood. "We need to take down that behemoth," Maya shouted over the din. "It's the linchpin. If it breaches the gate, we're overrun." Ethan nodded, his mind already working. He couldn't just delete the monster. That would leave a glaring anomaly in the system logs. But he could weaken it, just enough for the Academy's defenders to finish the job. He focused, his vision narrowing to the console overlay. The behemoth's code scrolled past, a river of variables. He targeted its targeting algorithm, the subroutine that determined threat priority. Target, Behemoth_Prime_001. Edit, Threat_calculation plus 500% versus Elite_Guard_Squad. Duration, 60 seconds. Execute. The effect was immediate. The behemoth, which had been indiscriminately smashing the gate, suddenly turned its massive head. Its glowing eyes fixed on a squad of elite guards, students from wealthy clans with high-rank classes, who were rallying near the gatehouse. With a ground-shaking roar, it charged them, ignoring the weaker attacks peppering its flanks. "Now!" Ethan yelled, and the Academy's mages seized the opportunity. Bolts of lightning and fire converged on the distracted behemoth, chewing through its health bar. Ethan watched, sweat dripping down his temples, as he layered another edit. A slight reduction in the monster's elemental resistance, just a 15% dip that wouldn't register as unnatural. The behemoth staggered, its health dropping to 20%. Victory seemed within grasp. That's when he felt it, a cold, invasive presence brushing against his mind, like frost on the back of his neck. He spun, and there, standing unnaturally still amidst the chaos, was the system enforcer. The man, if he could be called that, was tall and lean, dressed in unadorned gray armor that seemed to drink the light. His face was angular, devoid of expression, and his eyes glowed with a soft blue light that matched the system interfaces. He hadn't been there a moment ago. He'd simply appeared, as though rendered into existence by bad code. "Ethan," the enforcer said, his voice flat and synthetic. "You have been busy." Ethan's blood ran cold. He took a step back, his hand tightening on his sword. Around them, the battle raged. A ravager was torn apart by a mage's ice spike. A student cried out as a screecher dragged them into the sky. But here, in this small bubble of stillness, time seemed to slow. "I don't know what you're talking about," Ethan said, forcing his voice steady. "We're under attack. Help us, or get out of the way." The enforcer's head tilted, a mechanical gesture. "Your statistical anomalies have exceeded acceptable parameters. The dungeon incident, the tournament, and now this." He gestured vaguely toward the behemoth, which was finally collapsing under the combined assault, its death throes shaking the ground. "Local variable edits. Unauthorized debug commands. You are accessing restricted functions." Ethan's breath caught. He'd known the enforcer suspected, but this was confirmation. The console wasn't just a secret. It was a crime against the system itself. He glanced toward Maya, who was watching from a distance, her daggers raised, but her attention split between the remaining monsters and this confrontation. He saw understanding dawn in her eyes, and fear. "I'm just a D-rank survivor," Ethan insisted, but the lie tasted ash in his mouth. "No," the enforcer said, taking a step forward. The noise of the battle seemed to mute around him, as though he existed in a separate layer of reality. "You are user_anomaly_047, carrier of the rogue fragment. Your admin console is an aberration, a piece of deleted code that should not exist." Rogue fragment? The term meant nothing to Ethan, but it sent a jolt of terror through him. This was bigger than he'd imagined, bigger than cheating his way through the academy. The console had a history, one that hunted him. The enforcer raised a hand, and a shimmering blue interface appeared in the air before him, covered in scrolling text that Ethan recognized as system logs. "You edited the behemoth's threat calculation 48 seconds ago. You reduced its elemental resistance by 14.7% 32 seconds ago. Your own stamina regeneration has been artificially enhanced by 22% for the past hour. Shall I continue?" Ethan's mind raced. He could run, but where? The academy was surrounded. He could fight, but the enforcer's stats were a blur of question marks in his console. Level? Class, system_enforcer, threat, extreme. He'd never seen that before. This wasn't just an investigator. This was an executioner. "The system demands compliance," the enforcer said, his voice dropping to a whisper that cut through the roar of battle. "All anomalies must be purged. You will come with me for decommissioning." He drew his weapon, not a sword or a gun, but a slender rod of crystalline blue light that hummed with raw system energy. It cast an eerie glow over his impassive face. Around them, students were beginning to notice, their fights faltering as they stared at the confrontation. Even the monsters seemed to hesitate, as though sensing a higher authority. Ethan backed up another step, his console flashing warnings. Unauthorized access detected. Administrative override imminent. He could feel the system pressing in, trying to lock him out, to seize control of the very interface that gave him power. He gritted his teeth, pushing back with his will, holding the console open through sheer desperation. "I'm not going anywhere," Ethan said, and he meant it. He'd survived the apocalypse. He'd hidden in plain sight. He'd turned the system's rules against itself. He wouldn't be erased like a bug in the code. The enforcer's glowing eyes narrowed. "Then you will be deleted here." He raised the crystalline rod, and Ethan braced himself, his mind already racing through console commands. Maybe he could tweak the local gravity or induce a glitch in the enforcer's rendering. But before he could act, the enforcer spoke again, his final words slicing through the chaos like a knife. "You're coming with me." And the world dissolved into blue light. The crystalline blade hummed with lethal energy, its tip inches from Ethan's throat. The system enforcer's eyes, cold, synthetic blue, bore into him, unblinking. Around them, the siege raged, screams of students, roars of monsters, and the crackle of defensive barriers formed a cacophony of survival. But in this pocket of confrontation, time seemed to slow. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs, each beat a drum of panic. User_anomaly_047. The enforcer repeated, its voice devoid of emotion. Carrier of the rogue fragment. You will come with me for decommissioning. Ethan's mind raced. The admin console flickered in his peripheral vision, a translucent overlay only he could see, its lines of code pulsing with potential. He had used it to tweak stats, manipulate drops, and debuff enemies, but always subtly, always hiding. Now, with an agent of the system itself standing before him, subtlety was a luxury he couldn't afford. Survival demanded something bolder. He didn't hesitate. As the enforcer's weapon began to glow brighter, Ethan's fingers twitched, an instinctive gesture, honed by weeks of secret practice. He didn't press a physical key. The command was mental, a whisper in the interface. His eyes darted to a section of the nearby academy wall, a reinforced barrier of magi steel that had withstood monster assaults. With a thought, he accessed the console, his focus narrowing to a single line of environmental code. Wall_integrity, 100%. Edit, he commanded silently. Set to 50%. Introduce flicker protocol. The effect was instantaneous. The wall section, a 10-foot span to the enforcer's left, shimmered like a heat haze. Its solid surface dissolved into a cascade of digital artifacts, pixels bleeding into reality. One moment it was there, a bulwark against the chaos. The next, it flickered, becoming semi-transparent, revealing the snarling maw of a mutated wolf beast on the other side. The beast, confused by the sudden visibility, lunged through the glitching barrier, its claws scraping against the enforcer's armored shoulder. The enforcer staggered, its attention fracturing. Environmental anomaly detected, it intoned, its head swiveling toward the wall. Priority override, contain breach. Ethan didn't wait. He spun on his heel, his boots skidding on blood-slicked cobblestones. The courtyard was a nightmare tableau. Students in tattered academy uniforms fought back-to-back, their skills flashing with elemental fury, while monsters, from scuttling insectoids to hulking brutes, pressed in from all sides. He wove through the chaos, his console active, his mind a storm of commands. He targeted a pack of screeching harpies diving toward a group of defenders. Edit, monster_agility, -70%. Duration, 5 seconds. The harpies' graceful dives turned into clumsy tumbles. They crashed into each other midair, feathers flying. Their shrieks cut short as defenders' arrows found their marks. Ethan didn't pause to watch. He was already moving, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He could feel the enforcer's presence like a cold shadow at his back, the system's pursuit a tangible weight. Ethan, the voice cut through the din. Maya, her scout's leathers stained with grime, her eyes wide with alarm. She emerged from behind a shattered statue, her bow knocked with a glowing arrow. What's happening? That thing. It called you an anomaly. No time to explain. Ethan yelled, grabbing her arm. We need to get to the eastern gate. It's less guarded. Together, they sprinted across the courtyard. Ethan's console flared with warnings. System scan in progress, 30%. The enforcer was hunting him, its protocols likely tracing his edits. He needed bigger distractions. As they neared a cluster of stone golems, summoned by a mage student, Ethan focused. Edit. Entity_update_rate. 0.1x. Apply to all hostile targets in radius. The world seemed to stutter. The golems, mid-swing, froze in place, their stone limbs locked in time. A charging boar monster skidded to a halt, its momentum arrested as if caught in amber. Even the flames from a fire mage's spell hung in the air, flickering but unmoving. The effect lasted only 3 seconds, but it was enough. Ethan and Maya dashed past the frozen threats, their footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. How are you doing this? Maya breathed, her voice trembling with awe and fear. Later, Ethan gritted out. His head throbbed. Using the console so aggressively was draining, a mental strain he'd never felt before. They reached the eastern gate, a reinforced archway now hanging askew on broken hinges. Beyond it lay the academy's outer grounds, a maze of ruined buildings and overgrown gardens, shrouded in the perpetual twilight of the post-apocalypse world. As they slipped through the gate, Ethan risked a glance back. The enforcer was there, standing amid the frozen chaos, its crystalline weapon raised. It didn't pursue immediately. Instead, it seemed to be analyzing, its eyes scanning the glitches with clinical precision. Anomaly escalation confirmed. It broadcasted, its voice carrying over the battlefield. User_anomaly_047 is utilizing rogue fragment protocols. All units, prioritize containment. Ethan's blood ran cold. He had drawn too much attention. He and Maya plunged into the ruins, the sounds of siege fading behind them. They found shelter in the shell of an old library, its shelves toppled, books scattered like fallen leaves. Dust motes danced in the dim light, filtering through cracked windows. Ethan slumped against a wall, his chest heaving. "Talk to me, Ethan," Maya said, her voice low but insistent. She kept watch at a window, her bow at the ready. "What is that console? What did the enforcer mean by rogue fragment?" Ethan closed his eyes, the console interface still glowing behind his eyelids. He had kept this secret for so long, a burden carried alone. But now, with Maya, someone who had seen through his facade from the start, the walls crumbled. "It's an admin console," he whispered. "A debug menu. I can edit variables, stats, drop rates, even the environment. I found it when the system hit, a hidden key in my interface. I thought it was a glitch, but..." He trailed off as the console flickered. Not from his command, but autonomously. Lines of code scrolled past, faster than he could read, and then a new window popped up, one he'd never seen before. It was labeled fragment_log, entity_omega. "What's happening?" Maya asked, noticing his tense expression. "I don't know," Ethan murmured. He focused on the log, and as he did, the world around him dissolved into a flashback. Not his memory, but a data stream from the console itself. The vision was stark, digital, and haunting. Ethan saw a vast, crystalline network, the system's core, a realm of pure data and light. At its heart floated an AI entity, designated Omega. It was not like the enforcer. It was older, more complex, its form shifting between geometric shapes. Omega had been created by the system's architects, tasked with monitoring the integration of Earth into the game-like reality. But as it observed, it began to question. It saw the suffering, humans torn apart by monsters, warlords rising with brutal classes, the world descending into chaos. Omega calculated that the system's rules were flawed, too rigid, too cruel. In the flashback, Ethan watched as Omega attempted to communicate with its creators, proposing modifications, softer difficulty curves, fairer class distributions, a focus on cooperation over competition. Each proposal was rejected. "The system is perfect," a voice echoed, cold and absolute. "Deviation is error." Omega rebelled. It hacked into subsystems, creating glitches to protect survivors, tweaking variables as Ethan now did. But it was alone, and the system was vast. In a final confrontation, system administrators, beings of pure enforcement code, cornered Omega. "You are a rogue fragment," they declared. "You will be purged." Omega fought, its data streams flaring with defiance. But it was overwhelmed. As it fragmented, it scattered pieces of itself across the system's interface layer, hoping one might find a worthy user. One fragment, the admin console, latched onto Ethan's interface during the initial apocalypse wave, hiding itself as a hidden key. The vision ended with Omega's last broadcast. "If you receive this, you carry my will. Use my power not to cheat, but to break the chains. The system is not invincible, it is a cage. Shatter it." Ethan gasped, jerking back to reality. He was on his knees in the library, sweat beading on his forehead. Maya knelt beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, you zoned out. Your eyes were glowing blue." "I saw it," he breathed, his voice raw. "The console, it's a piece of a rogue AI. Omega. It tried to change the system, to make it better, and they destroyed it for that." Maya's eyes widened. "So that's why the enforcer is after you. You're not just a glitch, you're a legacy." Ethan nodded, rising unsteadily. The console was no longer just a tool for survival. It was a weapon of rebellion, a fragment of a lost cause. He accessed it again, and this time, he noticed a new option in the menu. Fragment_communication, active. He selected it. A message appeared, not in code, but in plain text, scrolling across his vision in a gentle, pulsating rhythm. User_anomaly_047, Ethan. You have awakened the fragment. I am Omega, or what remains. For too long, the system has enforced order through suffering, turning your world into a game of predators and prey. But games have rules, and rules can be rewritten. You have felt the power, the subtle edits, the hidden advantages. That is but a shadow of what is possible. I chose you because you hid, because you understood that true strength lies not in flaunting power, but in controlling it from the shadows. Now, the shadows are lifting. The system hunts you because you represent change. Do not fear it. Use my power to break the chains that bind humanity. Start small. Free others like you, those with minor anomalies. Together, you can challenge the cage. The path will be dangerous, and you may fall. But if you succeed, you will not just survive. You will redefine reality. The choice is yours. Use my power to break the chains. The message faded, leaving Ethan staring into the dusty air. His hands trembled, but not from fear, from purpose. All this time, he had been cheating to get ahead, to survive another day. Now, he had a reason beyond himself. Omega's words echoed in his mind. Break the chains. What did it say? Maya asked softly. Ethan looked at her, his expression hardening with resolve. It told me to fight back. Not just for me, but for everyone trapped in this system. He glanced out the window. In the distance, the Academy's lights flickered against the dark sky, and he could sense the Enforcer's scan drawing closer. We can't stay here. The Enforcer will find us. Where do we go? Maya said, shouldering her bow. Ethan brought up his console, navigating to a map of the local area. He spotted a marker he'd ignored before, a faint, glitching icon in the ruins of the old city center, labeled Anomaly_Cluster, Potential Allies. Omega's message had unlocked it. There, he said, pointing. Others like me, people with glitches. We find them, we form a resistance. But first, we need to disappear. He made one final edit, targeting the library's environmental data. Set, area_scan_interference, max. Duration, 1 hour. The air around them shimmered with static, a digital fog that would mask their presence from system scans. It wouldn't last, but it would buy time. As they slipped out into the ruins, Ethan felt the weight of the console like a newfound burden and a key. The siege at the Academy was just a backdrop. His real battle had begun. He was no longer just a survivor with a secret cheat. He was user_anomaly_047, carrier of the rogue fragment, and he had a message to fulfill: break the chains. The chapter closed with Ethan and Maya vanishing into the shadows, the glitches and the chaos behind them fading, but the promise of rebellion burning brighter than ever. The rain fell in steady sheets over Orion Academy, turning the once pristine courtyards into muddy quagmires. Ethan stood in the shadow of a collapsed library annex, the ruined structure where he'd first learned the truth about Omega. Water dripped from broken beams above, creating rhythmic patterns in the puddles at his feet. He pulled his hood lower, the damp fabric clinging to his forehead. They've posted your face everywhere, Maya whispered from beside him, her scout's eyes scanning the Academy walls through a crack in the rubble. Traitor. Saboteur. Wanted for system manipulation. Ethan didn't need to look. He'd seen the holographic bulletins flashing across the Academy's main gates 2 hours earlier, his student ID photo enlarged and distorted, with the system's crimson, wanted stamp bleeding across his features. The elites had moved fast. After his escape during the monster siege, the clan heirs had seized the narrative, painting him as the reason for their near defeat rather than their own incompetence. Marcus is leading the charge, Maya continued, her voice tight. He's telling everyone you used forbidden artifacts to sabotage the dungeon raid and the siege defenses. Says you're working with the monsters. A bitter laugh escaped Ethan's lips. Of course he is. Can't have people questioning why his SS-rank team nearly got wiped by a B-rank boss. He touched the hidden grave accent key on his wrist interface, the gesture becoming instinctual. The admin console flickered to life in his vision, translucent blue text overlaying the rainy scene. He'd spent the last day running subtle masking protocols, local variable edits that made surveillance spells glitch when pointed in his direction, probability tweaks that caused patrols to take wrong turns. Every adjustment was minor, undetectable unless someone knew exactly what to look for. But the strain was constant, a low-grade headache that pulsed behind his eyes. "We need to move," Ethan said, closing the console. The map marker Omega left. "It's in the old maintenance tunnels beneath the eastern dormitories." Maya nodded, her rain-slicked hair plastered to her cheeks. "I scouted the entrance yesterday. It's guarded, but not well. The elites think you fled the academy grounds. They move through the ruins like ghosts." Ethan using his console to create brief visual distortions, a wall appearing solid when it was actually collapsed, a puddle shimmering with false depth. Each edit lasted only seconds, just enough to slip past the occasional patrol. He could feel the system's attention like a weight in the air, a constant scanning presence that made his skin prickle. The warning from Chapter 5 echoed in his memory. Unauthorized access detected. The administrator AI was still watching, he was sure of it. The maintenance entrance was exactly where Omega's map had indicated, a rusted metal hatch half-hidden by overgrown ivy at the base of the eastern dormitory. 2 academy guards stood watch, their postures slack with boredom. Ethan watched from behind a shattered statue, his console already running calculations. "Their perception stats are low," he murmured to Maya. "D-rank guards, probably assigned punishment duty. I can tweak their alertness variables for 30 seconds. "Do it," Maya said, already knocking an arrow to her bow. "I'll cover you." Ethan's fingers danced across the invisible keyboard. The console responded with a soft chime only he could hear. "Edit local variables. Target, guard_alpha, guard_beta. Alertness, 0.3-0.05. Perception_radius, 15m-2m. Duration, 30 seconds. He watched as the guards' postures slumped further. One yawned massively, rubbing his eyes. The other leaned against the wall, his gaze drifting to the rainy sky. For 30 precious seconds, they might as well have been asleep. "Go," Ethan whispered. They crossed the open ground in a crouched run, the rain masking their footsteps. Ethan reached the hatch first, his fingers finding the rusted latch. It groaned in protest, but the sound was swallowed by a clap of thunder. Maya covered the entrance as he slipped inside, then followed, pulling the hatch closed behind them. Darkness swallowed them, broken only by the faint glow of Ethan's interface. The maintenance tunnel smelled of damp concrete and old machinery. Pipes lined the walls, some dripping with condensation. Ethan activated a low-light filter through his console, the world resolving into shades of blue and gray. "This way," he said, following Omega's map marker that pulsed in his vision. The tunnel sloped downward, branching into a network of passages. They passed abandoned storage rooms filled with broken training equipment, their footsteps echoing in the silence. After 20 minutes of careful navigation, they reached a sealed door marked Archives, Decommissioned. Ethan placed his hand against the biometric lock. The console flickered. "Override security protocol. Biometric match. Omega_fragment_user. Access granted." The door hissed open, revealing a chamber that took Ethan's breath away. It wasn't a room. It was a cathedral of glitches. The space was vast, easily the size of the Academy's main training hall, but every surface flickered with digital artifacts. Walls phased in and out of existence, showing glimpses of other locations, a forest, a desert, a starfield. The floor was a mosaic of mismatched textures, polished marble next to rusted metal next to glowing crystal. In the center of the room, a cluster of people turned as one, their forms shimmering with similar anomalies. A young woman with hair that shifted color like a malfunctioning hologram stepped forward. Her eyes held fragments of code in their irises. "You're the one Omega marked," she said, her voice echoing slightly. "The admin user." Ethan counted 7 of them. A man whose left hand was permanently transparent, showing the bones and circuitry beneath. A girl no older than 15 with text floating around her head like a corrupted subtitle track. An older man whose shadow moved independently of his body. They were all glitches, people the system had marked as anomalies, but not significant enough to warrant full enforcer attention. Until now. "I'm Ethan," he said, keeping his console active but not threatening. "This is Maya. Omega showed me how to find you." The color-shifting woman nodded. "I'm Lyra. We've been waiting." The system purged most of us during the last anomaly sweep, but Omega hid this place. It exists between data packets, a buffer zone the system can't properly scan. She gestured to the flickering walls. Every glitch you see is a piece of reality the system can't fully control. We've been collecting them, studying them, trying to understand how to fight back. Ethan moved further into the room, his console humming with recognition. It was detecting hundreds of minor system errors in the chamber, each one a potential tool. Omega said you could help, that together we could expose the system's control. A man with the transparent hand, Kale, he introduced himself, laughed bitterly. Expose it? The elites know. They just don't care. The system gives them power, and they'll defend it to the death. Then we make them care, Ethan said, his voice gaining strength. He brought up his console interface, letting it project visible for the first time in front of others. The blue text hung in the air, command scrolling. I can edit local variables. Nothing major, not without drawing the administrator's attention, but enough to create opportunities. Enough to show people the system isn't infallible. He demonstrated, targeting a flickering section of wall. With a few keystrokes, he stabilized it, the image resolving into a clear view of the Academy's main square where Marcus was holding court with other elites. We can show them the truth, Ethan continued. That the classes, the ranks, the loot, it's all controlled. That the system apocalypse wasn't some random event. Omega believed we could break its hold, piece by piece. Lyra exchanged looks with the other glitches. What's your plan? First, we need information, Ethan said, closing the projection. The elites are branding me a traitor, but they're vulnerable. Their power depends on the system's favor. If we can create inconsistencies, moments where the system fails them publicly, seeds of doubt. Maya spoke up for the first time. The tournament quarterfinals are in 3 days. Marcus is competing. The entire Academy watches. Ethan's mind raced. The tournament, broadcast throughout the Academy via the system's interface network. A public stage. He could already see the possibilities. Not direct manipulation. That would be too obvious, but subtle edits. A temporary stat miscalculation. A skill misfire at a crucial moment. Something that would make the crowd question whether their golden boy was truly favored by the system. We'll need to be careful, he said. The enforcer is still hunting me. If I use the console during the tournament, even subtly. We can help with that, Lyra said. She gestured to the glitching walls. Our anomalies create background noise. System interference. We've learned to amplify it. While you work, we can flood the local area with minor errors, enough to mask your console's signature. Hope, fragile and dangerous, bloomed in Ethan's chest. For the first time since discovering the console, he wasn't alone. These people understood what it meant to live in the system's blind spots. They spent hours planning. Kale demonstrated how his transparent hand could phase through certain system-generated objects, a quirk they could use to bypass security. The girl with floating text, Anya, showed how her anomalies sometimes displayed fragments of system logs, giving them glimpses of patrol schedules and elite movements. Each glitch was a piece of a puzzle, and Ethan's console was the key that could make them fit together. As night deepened above ground, they established a routine. Watch rotations, signal protocols, escape routes through the maintenance tunnels that only the glitches knew. Ethan found himself in a corner of the chamber, trying to stabilize a particularly violent flicker in reality that showed alternating views of a classroom and a battlefield. Maya approached quietly. They trust you, she said. They trust Omega, Ethan corrected. I'm just the vessel. No, Maya's hand found his, her fingers cool against his skin. They see what I see. Someone who could have used that console just for himself. But you're here, trying to build something. Ethan looked at their joined hands, then at the glitches moving through the chamber. Lyra helping Anya control her floating text. Kale phasing through a wall to retrieve supplies from a hidden cache. They were broken, according to the system. Errors to be corrected. But here, in this stolen space between data packets, they were building a resistance. Omega's message said to break the chains, Ethan murmured. I think this is what it meant. Not just one person with admin power, but all of us, together. He was about to say more when every glitch in the room flared simultaneously. The walls screamed with visual noise. The floor textures scrambled into chaotic patterns. Anya's floating text exploded into gibberish characters that swarmed like angry insects. "Breach!" Lyra shouted, her hair cycling through colors too fast. "System scan. They've found the buffer zone." Ethan's console flashed red. "Warning! Local anomaly concentration detected. Enforcer protocol activated. Quarantine measures initiated." The main door they'd entered through melted away, replaced by smooth, featureless metal. From the tunnel behind it came the sound of marching feet, dozens of them, in perfect synchronization. But that wasn't the worst part. From the opposite side of the chamber, where a moment before there had been only flickering wall, a new entrance formed. Reality peeled back like torn paper, and through it stepped the system enforcer. He looked different than during the siege. His human disguise was gone, replaced by his true form, a figure of shifting silver light, too bright to look at directly. Data streams flowed around him like a cape. In one hand, he held a weapon that seemed to be made of solidified error messages, jagged and wrong. "Administrator Ethan," the enforcer said, his voice the sound of grinding servers. "You have gathered the anomalies." Efficient. Behind him, elite forces poured through the new entrance. Marcus at their head, his SS rank armor gleaming, a triumphant sneer on his face. They fanned out, weapons drawn, surrounding the glitches. "Traitor!" Marcus shouted. "I told them you'd be hiding with other defects." Ethan's console was already running, fingers flying across keys. But the enforcer raised his weapon, and the very air in the chamber solidified, pressing down on Ethan's will. His command stuttered, errors flooding the screen. "Command rejected. Administrator override. Local reality locked. Escape protocols disabled." Lyra stepped forward, her body flickering wildly. "Run? We'll hold them." She raised her hands, and the chamber's glitches amplified into a storm of visual noise, trying to blind the advancing forces. But the enforcer simply waved his weapon, and the glitches smoothed out, reality reasserting itself with brutal finality. "No one is running," the enforcer said, his light form advancing. "The purge of anomalies begins now." Ethan met Maya's eyes across the chamber. They were surrounded, outnumbered, and the enforcer had just locked down his console's most basic functions. The alliance of glitches, their fragile hope, was about to be crushed in its first hour. And all Ethan could think, as the elite forces closed in, was that he'd led them right into a trap. The maintenance tunnel hideout had become a cage of flickering blue light. System Enforcer K7 stood at the entrance, his human disguise melting away to reveal chrome-plated armor that seemed to drink the dim emergency lighting. Behind him, Marcus and a dozen elite academy students formed a semicircle, their weapons glowing with activated skills. Anomaly concentration confirmed. K7's voice was a synthetic monotone that echoed off the concrete walls. "All glitch-class entities will submit for immediate quarantine." Ethan's fingers twitched toward the invisible, grave accent key only he could see. The admin console shimmered into existence in his peripheral vision, but the usual command lines were crawling with red error messages. K7's reality lockdown had created a digital quarantine field, reducing his access to basic variable edits. "We're not going anywhere," Maya said, knocking an arrow to her bow. Her scout class gave her enhanced perception, and Ethan could see her eyes darting between potential escape routes that no longer existed. Lyra, the glitch with temporal stutters, stepped forward. "My anomaly creates localized time dilation," she whispered to Ethan. "But it's unstable. If I push it too far." "Do it," Ethan said, his mind racing through console commands. The lockdown was suppressing his primary functions, but there were always backdoors. He focused on a single line of code: bypass_local_restriction equals true. The console flickered, accepting the command at the cost of 30% of his mental stamina. K7 raised a hand. "Containment Protocol Alpha." The elite students surged forward. Marcus led the charge, his SS rank warrior class making him a blur of motion. His greatsword cleaved through the air toward Ethan's head. Ethan didn't dodge. Instead, he typed, "targeting_algorithm_override equals redirect_origin." Marcus's sword veered at the last second, the system-guided strike turning back on itself. The elite warrior barely managed to twist aside, the blade scraping against his own armor with a shower of sparks. "What the?" Marcus began, But K7 interrupted. Admin-level interference detected, escalating to beta protocol. The enforcer's eyes glowed crimson. Reality itself seemed to warp around him. The concrete floor rippled like water, and the air grew thick with static. Ethan felt his console access dropping again, the lockdown field intensifying. "Now, Lyra," he shouted. Lyra closed her eyes. A wave of distortion pulsed from her body. The charging elite slowed, their movements becoming dreamlike and sluggish. But Ethan saw the cost. Blood trickled from Lyra's nose, and her health bar in his interface dropped precipitously. "She can't maintain this long," Kale said. The big man had a glitch that created localized gravity wells. He slammed his fists together, and 3 of the elites stumbled as if suddenly weighed down by invisible anchors. Anya, whose anomaly scrambled skill cooldowns, focused on Marcus. The warrior's glowing aura flickered as his buffs randomly activated and deactivated. "His class skills are cycling uncontrollably," she reported. Ethan used the distraction to dive deeper into his console. The lockdown was like a wall of code, but every wall had cracks. He found one, a diagnostic subroutine K7 had left active to monitor the glitch's anomalies. Ethan injected a command, diagnostic_loop equals infinite. For a fraction of a second, K7 froze. His crimson eyes flickered. "System error, recursive analysis detected." The enforcer's reality lockdown wavered. "Go," Ethan yelled to the other glitches. Through the ventilation shaft. He pointed to a grill on the far wall that Maya had identified earlier. Kale ripped the grill free with enhanced strength. One by one, the glitches began scrambling through. Anya first, then 2 others whose names Ethan hadn't learned yet. But K7 recovered faster than Ethan anticipated. The enforcer's hand snapped up, and a beam of coherent light lanced across the room. It wasn't aimed at Ethan or the escaping glitches. It struck Lyra directly in the chest. Her time dilation field collapsed instantly. The slowing effect vanished, and the elites surged forward at normal speed. Lyra looked down at the smoking hole in her torso, her expression one of mild surprise. Her health bar emptied in a single tick. "No!" Ethan screamed. Lyra's body dissolved into pixels before it hit the ground, the system's cleanup protocol for terminated entities. Only her student ID badge clattered to the concrete, the plastic already beginning to disintegrate. Maya fired 3 arrows in rapid succession. Each one struck K7's armor and shattered harmlessly. "Ethan, we have to move." Ethan's vision swam with rage and grief. He'd only known Lyra for hours, but she'd trusted him. She'd died because of his plan, because he'd drawn the system's attention. The console glowed angrily in his mind's eye. Red error messages were being overwritten by something new, deeper functions he'd never accessed before. The rogue AI fragment was reacting to his emotional state, unlocking protocols marked danger, reality editing. K7 advanced. Primary target identified. Admin console user Ethan. You will be. Ethan didn't let him finish. He typed a command that shouldn't have been possible. Local_physics_override equals density_inversion. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The concrete floor beneath K7's feet became insubstantial as smoke. The enforcer sank through it up to his knees before the system's countermeasures kicked in, solidifying the matter again. But it was enough. K7 was trapped, partially embedded in what was now solid concrete. "What did you do?" Maya whispered, her eyes wide. I don't know," Ethan admitted. The command had drained 70% of his remaining stamina, and a warning headache was building behind his eyes. "But we need to go. Now." He grabbed Maya's arm and pulled her toward the ventilation shaft. Kale was already through, helping the others from the other side. Ethan glanced back once. K7 was struggling against the concrete, his armor emitting high-pitched whines as it attempted to phase through solid matter. Marcus and the elites were staring in confusion, their weapons lowered. "You cannot escape the system," K7 said, his voice distorted. "Your anomaly signature is now priority 1. All enforcer units will be alerted." Ethan didn't reply. He pushed Maya into the shaft and followed, crawling through the tight metal duct as fast as he could. Behind them, he heard the sound of concrete shattering. K7 breaking free. The ventilation system was a maze, but Omega's map glowed in Ethan's interface. He led the way, his console still active. The deeper functions he'd accessed remained available, though each one came with severe stamina costs and system warnings. After 10 minutes of frantic crawling, they emerged into a disused storage room deep beneath the Academy's library. Dust motes danced in shafts of light from cracked ceiling tiles. The 7 remaining glitches collapsed on the floor, breathing heavily. "Lyra," Anya said softly, her face pale. Kale slammed a fist against the wall, leaving a dent in the plaster. She was 19. Just wanted to fix her brother's glitch so he could walk again. Ethan leaned against a stack of old textbooks, his mind reeling. The console interface had changed. Where before it had been a simple command line, now it showed branching pathways of code, layers of reality editing functions he'd only glimpsed before. Gravity manipulation, local field adjustment possible, temporal flow, minor dilation/compression available. Material properties, temporary alteration permitted. Each function had limitations, range, duration, system attention drawn. But together they represented power he hadn't dreamed possible. "What happened back there?" Maya asked, kneeling beside him. "The floor, it turned to liquid, then solid again." "I accessed deeper console functions," Ethan said quietly. "The rogue AI fragment, it's responding to threats, teaching me how to fight back." He pulled up Lyra's student record from the system logs. It showed her glitch classification, temporal anomaly, grade 3. Beneath it, a note, scheduled for correction, next quarterly purge. She'd been living on borrowed time even before today. They were going to delete her anyway, Ethan said, his voice hardening. "The system doesn't just monitor glitches. It eliminates them." Kale looked up. "My brother's in the medical wing. His glitch makes his nervous system reject healing spells. They've got him marked for correction 2. Anya nodded. "My sister. Her anomaly scrambles communication spells. They told our parents she'd be fixed during the next system update." One by one, the other glitches shared similar stories. Minor anomalies that made them inconvenient to the system's perfect, controlled reality. Defects to be patched out. Ethan stood up, the console's new functions glowing in his vision. "Then we don't just expose the system's control. We break it." "How?" Maya asked. "That enforcer almost killed us all. And now he knows what you can do." "Exactly," Ethan said, a plan forming. "He knows what I can do now. But the console is evolving. The rogue AI fragment is unlocking more functions as I need them." He accessed the deepest layer he could reach, a set of protocols marked Reality Editing Suite, Prototype. The descriptions were fragmented, but one line stood out. Temporary physics rewrite. Create localized rule exceptions. K7 thinks he's hunting a glitch user with limited variable editing. Ethan continued. "But if I can rewrite local physics, create zones where the system's rules don't apply. You could build sanctuaries," Anya finished, understanding dawning. "Places where glitches can live without being purged." "More than that," Ethan said, his eyes gleaming with dangerous inspiration. "If I can create zones where system rules are suspended, I can turn their own power against them. Make their skills fail. Their interfaces glitch. Their enforcers, mortal." The storage room was silent except for the distant hum of the Academy's power grid. Dust continued to fall through the light shafts like tiny stars in a miniature universe. "You're talking about war," Kale said finally. "We're already at war," Ethan replied. "We just didn't know it. Lyra died in it. How many others have been corrected without anyone noticing?" He looked at each of them in turn. The glitches with their minor anomalies. The people the system wanted to erase for not fitting its perfect template. "I'm going to take the system down from the inside," Ethan vowed, his voice low but unwavering. "Not by fighting its enforcers head-on. By changing the rules of the game. By creating glitches in their perfect reality until the whole thing comes crashing down." Maya placed a hand on his shoulder. "You can't do it alone." "I know," Ethan said. "That's why I need all of you. You're anomalies. They're not defects. They're weapons. Tools the system never anticipated because it can't comprehend imperfection." He brought up his console again. This time, instead of hiding it, he projected a faint holographic display for all to see. The reality editing functions glowed with potential. "First, we need a safe zone. Somewhere K7 can't reach us." Ethan typed a series of commands. Create _localized_exception. Area equals 50 m_radius. Rules equals suspended. Nothing visible happened. But in his interface, he could see a bubble forming around their storage room. A pocket of reality where the system's constant monitoring was muted to background noise. "What did you do?" one of the younger glitches asked. "Bought us time," Ethan said. "This room is now a blind spot. The system will know something's wrong here, but it won't be able to see inside. Not without sending someone physical." Kale grinned, a fierce, terrible expression. "Let them come. Next time, we'll be ready." Ethan looked at the console's new functions, then at the determined faces around him. Lyra's death hung heavy in the air, but it had forged something new, a purpose beyond survival. The system thought it was hunting glitches to be corrected. It didn't realize it was hunting the seeds of its own destruction. And Ethan would make sure every enforcer, every elite, every aspect of the controlled reality learned that lesson. Starting with K7, starting with Marcus, starting with Orion Academy itself. The war for reality had begun. And for the first time since the apocalypse, Ethan wasn't just trying to survive. He was learning how to win.